Bud, what do you have there? Is that another box? Is that a new 3D printer to look at? When I got you, you were a scrawny, starving wimp. The same people that had me take a look at the ferret scanner, they were like, hey, we like that video. You want to take a look at a new Creality 3D printer? And I was like, sure, yeah. Apparently this one's supposed to be really fast as well. So let's take a look once Bud is done with the box, of course. He definitely didn't stop growing at age 1. That is for darn sure. A week from today is the start of Murph 2023, the Midwest Rep Fest in Goshen, Indiana. I missed it last year because I had a virus in me. But this year, I'm hoping to make it. So I'm doing what I call Hermit Week. It's the same thing I did before MGC this year. I deliberately, for an entire week, I avoid other humans as much as I can. Just in case. I don't think there's a whole lot of assembly required with this. I think I'm just going to pull it out of the box. Last time I was there, I was helping this guy named John. He had a really old Maker Gear cupcake, and we were fixing it up, getting it to work, and we were trying to print a lens cap, like for a Nikon camera. We got it to print most of the lens cap, but then it failed. But I kept the print, so I'm going to bring it this year and be like, hey, look, we've got work to do. Really has that new printer smell. Closed frame printer. I don't think I've ever done a review on one of these before. Let's see, unpack the printer, take out the power cord, move the chain to one side in the direction indicated by the arrow, finally take out the gray foam as shown. Okay, yeah. See, they should indicate that this is a top-down view. They don't. It should say top-down view of unit, front of unit. Yeah, it's got this energy chain, so you have to move it like that to pull this out. Is there something in this? Is it like an accessory pack? You know, there's like some gum and matches. I fooled around and fell in love. Do 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 do. Fooled around and fell in love. See, that was more awkward than this part. Why didn't they give me special instructions for that? Apparently the deal with this printer is that it is very fast. Oh, and it's got a big chamber fan. See that back there? I guess a chamber fan is better than a chamber pot. Oh man, dad jokes. Okay, you ready? That's right, you can get that new car smell anywhere in America from Creality. That's pretty hefty build plate. Looks like around probably 250 by 250 millimeters. Was it good for you too? What's with all these arrows? It feels like I'm doing a mortgage or divorce papers. Please apply glue before print. It's a magnetic bed that also needs glue. That's interesting. It's smooth. Well, I mean, it's metal, but it's also smooth. So it's a little different than those PEI Anycubics I've looked at, which is probably why you need glue on it. Looks like this, yeah, so there's no glass to it. This is just aluminum with a magnetic layer. Bud is Catatar, the last airbender. That insert did have an accessory packet inside of it. This screen, for instance. Pretty high density ribbon cable going to it. Is that right? This should... Nope, not quite. That required a fair bit of force to push into place. Yeah, sometimes I can take umbrage with that. Because like in the case of this, there's a fairly thin ribbon cable connector. And like if you were forcing this and you slipped, you go, you'd smash it down that way. And that could break the cable. So I would say the attachment of the screen, they should make it so it requires less force. Just so it reduces the chance of accidents. Because that's what happens. Like when I sliced open my thumb, it's like when you're putting a lot of force into something and you're having to put too much force into it and then you slip, that's when you hurt yourself. Or in the case of this, you might damage the ribbon cable. because obviously they want this to be, the chamber to have a constant temperature. That actually does help you print your prints. What's this loose connector over here? I wonder what that's all about. Also, a couple more divorce paper arrows down there. I wonder if you have to, I wonder if that's about adjusting the Z? I don't know. I assume this thing would have bed leveling. It's pretty new. The voltage selector's on the side of the unit. Man, it's way deep in there. Yeah, see how this picture is angled? They kind of make it look like it's a rocker switch, but now it's a red switch like everything else. Man, that is really far in there. And yeah, look, you need a flashlight to look in at it, okay? This could be better. I mean, this is an important step. It should be a lot easier to see this. I'm sure there's a reason why it's that deep, but it's unfortunate. Like, they could make like this window bigger. That would make it easier to see. Spool holder. Why is there a fingerprint on it? What is that all about? Oh, that's not the extruder. That's just the filament runout sensor. But I'm trying to make a video. I think that's just a filament runout sensor, not actually the extruder. Yeah, it's way too small to be an extruder. Yeah, it's a direct drive. That's good. But how about this gray stuff? This is hatch box, yeah. Insert into the deepest part of the Teflon tube until it cannot be removed. I guess that means push it all the way to the extruder. What the heck is this lever? Does that unlock the filament entry? I guess we'll find out. I guess it wants me to turn it on. Okay. I don't want to accidentally turn it on like Robert Palmer would. So that arrow I saw in the back, along with the arrows here on the sides, those refer to removing screws. So the screws are probably to keep the platform from moving during shipping. There we go. America language. This is a nice screen. Screen plus? What would that mean? Oh, it's brightness. Okay, so select language. Unfortunately, did not boot to the language screen. Hit OK. According to the manual, the screen is supposed to prompt me to remove screws and stuff, but it's not doing that. Oh yes, I fooled around and fell in love. Oh, it's the wrong size. Come on. These must be to keep the platform from moving during shipping. Where that arrow was pointing. I think I see it. Right there. Oh wow, this thing has 3 Z-axis lead screws. I wonder if we can actuate them individually, allowing it to alter the bed height. Everything's so reflective, it's kind of hard to film. I didn't get the standard boot up on this, so I think I'm going to try to go into self-test, which according to the menu, this happens when you start up the system anyway. Start detecting. Yeah, let's see what it does. That's interesting. There's 2 belts. Oh, I see. They've got the belts going all around in a interesting configuration. Actually, a lot of like cube-shaped printers do that. Looks like it raised the nozzle temperature to do those tests. That makes sense because the temperature raising would deform it. Let's see, attract, retract, 240 Celsius. Can we type it in? Oh, here we go. 215 Canada degrees. Let's do extrude. All right. I still have no idea what that lock lever means. It's only mentioned once in the manual. The included USB stick has all of the files you need on it, as well as the software, which apparently is custom Creality software. The first few pages of the PDF file match the pamphlet that was included. But then once you get a ways down here, it gets a little bit more detailed. This boot screen stuff, this didn't happen on mine. So I went in and I found the options anyway. So right now I've got it doing the self-inspection. Keep the extrusion switch off before printing. What does the extrusion switch do? Is that the off position to the left? It extruded, but not very much. Is it because of that lock lever? Didn't feel like the filament was really going in, so I popped off the ring clamp. So that's going in. So that's with it on unlock, lock mode. Now it's not moving. So does that mean it's clamped in a gear, or does that mean that it's free to move? It's in the locked position and it did extrude a bunch of filament. So I guess that's how it's supposed to work. Let's shift it into neutral and see if it still extrudes. It's not documented. It's just mentioned once. It's like, keep filament switch on when not extruding. But it's not on. It says lock and unlock. Extruding, nothing's happening. Switch to lock. Okay, so that must be the friction wheel clutch, so to speak. It probably engages the friction wheel with the filament. You know, I would grab that lever and I'd open up the clutch. This appears to be basically the same thing. So if you're trying to remove or install filament manually, you'd probably want to set this to unlock, which would be in this direction. And then when printing, to the left. The part cooling fan on the printer is currently doing its impression of an F-35 trying to do a VTOL landing. So just excuse the noise. Okay, K1 series. I guess it's just the K1. Print width, 220 millimeters. Sorry, I was 30 millimeters off in my guess. I'm just an American, you know. I don't know anything about the metric system. Material, hyper PLA. Can I just get generic PLA? Thanks. This should be able to connect via Wi-Fi, right? Oh, okay. Choose language and region. Did that. Choose printer. Did that. Click on model library and select the model file. All right. Model library. Where's that? This is no. Log in. No, I don't think I want to do that. What are these, like coins or something that you buy? What is this, like? Oh, they don't have like a DLC thing going on, do they? Yeah, there's some sort of credits for this. So this is like Call of Duty, I guess? Here's an idea. What if I just put in my own file? Roll your own at the Prime Quarter Steakhouse. Okay, I dragged and dropped a common part in here. It's pretty small. Normal quality is 0.2 millimeters. New profile. Let's call this crap. And we're going to copy it from normal. Okay. Layer height is going to be 0.3. Initial layer height 0.2. That's fine. Wow, 300 millimeters a second. That's really fast. Outer wall speed 200. Inner 300. Travel speed 500. Holy crap. All right. Let's see. Let's go back to the manual. Select it down. I already did the model, and I did it my way. Start slicing. Selection of LAN printing. Add a device. Okay, so this must be on the local network. All right, so let's go to slice. It's off the bottom of the screen. You have to trust me. It's there. LAN printing. Device list is empty. Okay. Okay, it looks like it found my printer on the network. Great! Wow, I can see all the information about the printer, including the fact that I'm trying to heat up the nozzle again. All right, we're connected. Let's just see if this works. I mean, this is supposed to be easy, right? One-click printing. Oh, neat. Puts a little picture on the LCD. I guess it doesn't care if we open the door or not. What is that, going to be a wipe? Doing mesh leveling? Focus. Gentlemen, start your engines. Holy crap, it sounds like a PlayStation 4 Pro. $50 decibels? 100 decibels. Well, it's doing a four-corner mesh leveling, I assume. Nozzle's at 140 Celsius. Okay, now it's gotten the command to go up to 220 Celsius. I assume the bed's probably going to go up to around 60 as well. Whoa, that thing's cooking with gas. Look at it go. And now the bed, I assume. I think this is the big show. Here we go, folks. Now it goes into ludicrous speed. What do we got on this thing, a Cuisinart? Ludicrous speed? It's going even faster. It's gone to plaid. I've never understood that joke. Oh, cool. It's got like a little a fill-up display that shows you how far your print has to go. That's kind of cool. Wow, it's already at 50%? I know I say this in every one of these reviews that I make, but it's kind of weird how the stepper drivers have become silent and the fans have gotten louder. Actually, it's not too bad when you close the door. Yesterday's just a memory, and you close the door. I just made one mistake. I didn't know what to say when you called me baby. Dun, 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 dun. Don't say goodnight. Say you're gonna stay forever. I wonder if our muffins are done. That was pretty fast. It took longer to get started than it did to actually do the print. The print took like, what, 2 minutes? That's nuts. Let's print something bigger. Please apply, oh yeah, I forgot to apply glue before the print. Ah! I didn't see any mention of glue in the quick start manual, which is kind of weird. The only place I really see it is on this printer platform. So I just put on standard glue stick, which is what I use on my glass printers. I assume that's what it means. I don't know what else I would use. I mean, well, it looks like I got into a new dungeon in Horizon Zero Dawn on my PlayStation 4 Pro. Oh, I just realized it's this side chamber turbine fan that's actually causing most of the noise. The energy chain clunks against this side of the lid when I do the initial setup. I wonder why. Also, I wonder if there's a way to avoid having to do all of this pre-setup every time, because it takes about 2 minutes. I was like, oh no, 2 whole minutes. Well, like, if you can print something that like that little decap cover in 2 minutes, the warm-up procedure, also taking 2 minutes, doubles your print time. Here's that analog shaft that we made in conjunction with the Creality scanner. I selected this one because this one requires overhang support. Normally one of these takes about 40 minutes on my 150 millimeter a second flash forgery. Let's see, what is this? Okay, we already did that one. Layout, don't care. Support, what's this one? Others? Your favorite Nicole Kidman movie? Wake up computer, support grid. Let's do 2 millimeter, maximum angle, 70 degrees. You don't really need to put supports like here or here, but you kind of maybe want some up here. So by increasing the maximum angle to 70% ensures it, well, it just doesn't fill in this whole thing. That'll definitely put some there. I guess we just hit only add support to the hotbed. Actually, we don't want that. Automatic support. Let's see what it builds. That's a little excessive. Let's try that again. Let's increase the maximum angle to 90 degrees, which is going to be basically parallel to the bed. Automatic support. Still added quite a few. Let's look on the inside. Let's do this. Let's clear all the supports. Let's add custom supports. So they should be at 2 millimeter size. Oh, you have to be touching the piece for this to work? I say, what's going on here? What is this tomfoolery? Oh yeah, this is exactly how Simplify 3D works. The program that was the chosen one until it took forever to have an update. And the update was so insignificant that you may as well just use the old program. Why is it doing that? Oh, you have to touch the overhang? Okay, that's a little different than Simplify 3D. It's a little less intuitive. Simplify 3D, you just kind of drag these around in space, and then you're like, oh, it fits. Oh, do you have to be looking at it from below? See how it's highlighted these spots red as problem spots? Which is actually a good idea. Well, it's kind of cool that it shows you the problem services so you can just do it manually. Because sometimes, well, as you saw, when you do it automatically, sometimes it just goes hog wild with the supports. It's like, oh, I'm working for the 3D printer filament manufacturers. I'm going to use up all the filament. This should be fine, just like this. No wankas. I woke up pretty early today because I got that CPAP machine. It's like I don't even use my alarm anymore. It's like if I go to sleep, I wake up like 7 hours and 15 minutes later, no matter what. So if I go to sleep at like 11, I wake up at like 6:15. Midnight, I wake up, like 7:15 or around 7, which is what I did today. So I got started on this review pretty early. Then, of course, in the mornings, my cat is super whiny. He's like, oh, I'm super needy, especially in the mornings. Oh, that's pretty good. Oh, it actually does a different, look at that crosshatch material for the interface. See that? Upload to Creality Cloud. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Export to local, I guess that would be to a USB stick or LAN printing. Print time, 35 minutes, 14 seconds. Okay, that's a little faster than the other printers. What did it say? It's between 200 and 300. Of course, that's just the maximum speed that I can print. Like if your printer is having to, if you're printing something large where the print head is making large, long moves, it's going to be able to run faster. But when it's having to stop and change speed, that's going to slow it down because it doesn't just come to a stop. It ramps down and decelerates and accelerates. Remember the movie The Fifth Element where they like 3D print Leela? That was pretty cool. Okay, so 35 minutes and it will consume 12 grams of filament. Cool. Oh, cool. You could like keep track of multiple printers with this. Like, oh, I only want to see the printers that are printing so nothing shows up. I want to see all printers. I want to see idle printers. So you could use this to manage a printer farm. Ooh, that would be cool. Like you could have like 9 of these and say, okay, which one's ready for the next print? If you're doing rapid iterations. Looks like it's printing supports fairly similar to the Prusa slicer supports. Or is this meant as a giant part cooler? No, that is a big size, because why would there be a fan there unless that's to cool off the extruder? No, that is the part cooler. This thing is kicking in on layer 2. Wow, if this table's a rockin', don't come a knockin'. Holy crap, yeah, look at the translate speed on that thing. The thing is like zooming around. So yeah, it prints at like 200 to 300, but when it does a travel move, it's 500 millimeters a second. The printer came with these rubber feet vibration damper things. They look like the things they put on the base of buildings in San Francisco, like the earthquake-proof things. So I think these are meant to go on the feet of the machine to dampen some of the vibration. I mean, the machine's moving really quickly. It's it's going to vibrate because it's basically literally throwing its weight around. This thing is definitely fast. Wow, look at that. Yeah, see how there's 3 main sections that it's printing, like 2 legs under the main section? The speed at which it moves between them is 500 millimeters a second. I found this big, tall test print on the menu system built into the printer. Let's take a look at it. This took about 2.5 hours to print. It's weird. This is, well, obviously it's different than the PEI bed. But with the PEI bed, when you lift it up, the texture kind of makes it pop easier. Kind of like, obviously a ice cube tray isn't textured, but still. No, there is some stringing in the bags. I'm going to pull this off and I'm going to add it to the pile of parts. And of course, as usual, we'll look at the parts close up. Well, I put some glue in the middle, but it seems like the sides of it stuck fine without glue. I mean, maybe you don't need glue, but it says, please apply glue. I like the door. The door is cool. I think it's borosilicate glass. It's at least tempered. It is glass. That's actually, the sides are plastic. I was checking my email from the people that sent me this printer, and they said, oh, you need to try the filament that was included with it. It's high-speed filament. And I'm like, what? So color, hyper PLA white, print speed 40 to 600 millimeters a second. Well, it doesn't actually quite look white. It looks more like a waxy off-white to me. I will try this next, but in the meantime, let's check standard filaments. Although, based on these results, I think there must be something to it. Well, there must be because they emailed me about it. This was the first one that I printed. This is like a Hatchbox stone gray. Yeah, you can see lots of variations in the lines here. So that filament definitely is not appropriate for that printer. Okay, so here's another one. Yeah, we're seeing some of the same lines. I don't think it's as bad, but, well, actually, it might be. It's less obvious in the white filament. This was a 16-minute benchy. Yeah, you can see banding here and here. This is kind of odd, like the tip here. It looks like the part cooling fan isn't doing its job there, because usually when you get up to the top, there's not much filament. That's when you actually need the part cooling fan more. Yeah, so this took up the whole base of the unit. I printed this just in regular white. So this part of it looks pretty good. I mean, there is what feels like a seam back here. There are some bits of overhang down here. Probably because the nozzle is moving, is going over here to do these test pieces, then coming back over here. I think I need to try the high-speed filament. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'll just print this same file in the high-speed filament. And then it sends it over, but it also makes a copy of the file locally on the printer. I wonder if there's a way to make it automatically delete the file, because otherwise, you know, if you're doing like a lot of rapid iterations, which I often do, you might end up with tons of files on the local memory. Yeah, okay, Hyper PLA filament. I didn't know this was a thing. Oh, it's on sale today, $17.15. Okay, here's the Hyper filament. It definitely has a different look. It's very waxy. It's not flat like this Overture white PLA is. Yeah, I mean, it's a definite improvement in the layers. There's some stringing here. Let's see how these supports separate, because this is Creality software. Oh yeah, those come off lickety split. Yeah, what was it? Oh yeah, it was a different. I was using the Prusa slicer, and those supports, like, they stick way too much, like the top. Yeah, these came out easy peasy, actually really easy. Well, I found white, black, and gray on Amazon. I could get them here tomorrow, and actually they're on sale, 17 something per roll, so that's a great price. So I prefer this white because, well, look how this is like my teeth. You know, this is like when I'm like a baby, and this is like, you know, after 20,000 cans of Pepsi. Here's a slightly more intricate piece that I printed using the high-speed white. I should check the software to see if there's a setting for reduce layer speed for layers under, you know, 10 seconds or whatever, because obviously this, well, heck, all these layers would be under 10 seconds because that printer is very, very fast. Let's try removing this support material. It's a little tight in there, not too bad in general. It does put a little bit of a lattice at the top. I wonder if that software was forked from Cura. Is Cura open source? Cura's made by Ultimaker, which is a 3D printer manufacturer. But then again, oh yeah, you can see the top lattice there. That looks like something they would use to, like, fix your bones, or like a bone mesh. This pink piece was printed by a different printer. I have no idea which one. Let's see how this goes together. Screwdriver. All the support material was removed perfectly fine from in there, meaning this can close. And I looked it up. Cura is open source, so I think it's very likely that Creality probably just forked it and made their own version, because the interface is almost identical. And it all goes back to the original DNA of Joseph Prusa. He was the progenitor, the Prometheus, the 3D printing Prometheus. Yes, that could be a documentary. Joseph Prusa, 3D printing Prometheus. He snatched the fire, not from the gods, but from, who had all those patents? Stratasys, I think it was. Because 3D printing has been around for a long time. You just didn't hear about it until like 15 years ago. It's one of those things where like old patents had to run out before it actually went mainstream. Hey, man, Prometheus stole fire from the gods, and then he was punished. They tied him to a tree, and then like a raven would peck out his liver for all time. You remember that was in a God of War game. And then later on in another God of War game, there's a Norse character, that head thing. He's also attached to a tree for all time as punishment. It's almost like all these stories are the same. Oh man, how do we fit as much dialogue as possible into this God of War game so it's like Uncharted? Oh, I know, there's a head strapped to his waist. I think you are just the Nordic version of Prometheus. Oh, no, brother, I'm completely different. Okay, Creality Hyper Series filament. Apparently other brands make it as well, but Hyper filament, I had never heard about it until I looked at this printer. They got some black, white. That's white? Man, white is really like, you know, 1 pack a day white. And then gray. Ben, aren't you the same person who complains that they only make 3 colors of cars anymore? White, black, and gray. What color filaments do you always buy? White, black, and gray. Oh, I'm a monster! I'd be an abomination. You know what else is going to be an abomination? A live-action remake of Lilo and Stitch. Yes, we've created a giant charm vacuum to suck all of the charm out of this movie. Watch it work. The Walt Disney Company, it's gone from blow to suck. All right, let's load this up. All right, let's do a filament swap. I guess it's this. Extract, retract, retract. Yeah, it should be there shortly. 167. Actually, if I open up the clutch, I should be able to just pull it out at this point. Maybe I'm not supposed to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. All right, so I'm going to move. You know, this reminds me of like a little 8mm. Remember 8mm film? Yeah, it's like, oh, I'm going to watch my 8mm movies. I was asking my mom where my dad's 8mm camera was, and she's like, oh, you actually want some stuff? And I'm like, yes. But then she couldn't find it. She was like, I think it got stolen. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sure it got stolen when we were living out in the country. Like, a raccoon stole it. And it should be on retract, so I'm going to go to extrude. So it should be up to temperature. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to pull it into the system. Now that I have the hyperfilaments, I think it'd be cool to try to print something large. I had a fun idea. What if we went back to my original Atari 2600 portable files? Yes, I still have them. These are the files that launched 1,000 ships. And look, they're even well documented. So I'm going to export this as a DXF. So I'm going to do a life hack here. First of all, I'm going to convert it to line drawing so I'm not driven crazy. Then I drew a box around this to give me the center point. And I'm going to make that center point hit 0, 0 on the page, just like that. Now I'm going to export this as a DXF. Let's make sure that took. I'm going to go back over here into Fusion, insert DXF on that plane. Okay, there we go. So the center point, or the upper left corner of the DXF sheet, will be 0, 0, 0 in space in Fusion. 4 whopping. Oh, I think I used size 6 screws on this. I was such a noob. I still am. Oh, see, this was for the bit pass, so that's why it goes past the end, because the bit has to go past the end of the material. This should also go to 0, 0, which means these pieces will be lined up to each other. Oh, thanks for wasting my time with this extra click. It's like I'm going to be on my deathbed. My God, we weren't able to save him. If only we had a few more minutes that he spent clicking things. Would you like to swing on a star and carry moonbeams home in a jar and be better off than you are? Or would you rather be a fish? Was it the same person that sang that song about calling someone? Maybe. They weren't quite sure if they were going to call the person or not. Okay, now if I bring these up a 1/16 of an inch, that should give us roughly the same thing as before. It should all join together. This is what I get for working with files that are older than the average YouTuber. All right, this is where the screen batteries went. It was the 3AA, so it's going to be negative 0.6 approximately. There's an aluminum door that covered the battery, so it was basically just Velcroed in place. Although I think it had a bit of a lip on it too. I'm sure that was 1/8 of an inch, because that's a standard size for... Well, I still have this Atari portable. It's one of the few things that I ever built that I didn't sell. The original one, I've kept it this entire time, so I just double-checked a few things. There's actually a little bit of a lip on this thing right here. When you bring in something that's a DXF, it's not necessarily going to be parametric, but it's usually good enough. You know, like The Goonies. Oh, God. I never understood why everyone loves that movie so much. Oh, no, a subscriber count's like ding, 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 ding. Google Analytics. Well, you said that you didn't like The Goonies that much. The movie it wasn't even that big of a... When it came out, like, nobody cared. That's one of those movies that nobody cared about when it came out. And I know, because I was there. I was there, Gandalf, when the will of the Goonies failed. And it's like, Elrond is standing outside the theater. He's like, buy a ticket for the Goonies! And then most of America was like, never. Oh, brother. The lip was in this direction, so I need to get this.
and it was eighth of an inch. Yeah, eighth of an inch. So I'm gonna go a little bit further. I'm gonna go. Wait, no, it's a 16th of an inch. I'm gonna go 0.07, and let's hashtag shame for it. You know what's so weird? Like, what was it? Over 23 years ago when I first did this. Like, if I had these kind of tools in the year 2000, I would have been like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can do anything. Now here it is 23 years later. It's like, I don't feel like doing anything. Since I'm living in the future, I can go in and reinforce these. Oh, maybe not that one. That'll make it tough. I think that's everything. I had to put in the volume knob hole because I must have missed it in my original file, and I probably had to drill it in manually, and I was probably like, oh no! I made that out of acrylic, so I probably had to drill it very, very gingerly, which is easy to do because I'm a ginger. I guess I could probably do it like this, although there's going to be a ton of support material underneath it. Because even on that super fast printer, I mean, this thing's pretty big. This is like 7 by 4 inches. Probably take it a couple hours at least to print this. I would bet about 3 hours. I guess there's only one way to find out.
This is actually a pretty big print. It's going to take up almost the entire surface in this direction, but that's good. It's a good test. One thing I don't like about this part is it extrudes quite a bit of filament to prime the nozzle. I'm sure it's like, oh, you know, we want to make sure that the color has changed. But it's like, you don't have to extrude that much to change the color. Even if you're going from white to black, which I am right here, it changes so quickly. And I'm not upset because it's like, oh, it's a conspiracy to sell more filament. It's just like, the color's already changed. Now you're just wasting my time. Software is saying just over 4 hours to print this. That's a long time. Again, I wouldn't design something like that now where there's a big hollow concavity in it because it takes too long to print. And I don't really CNC stuff much anymore because 3D printers are so much more, they're just a lot easier to use. But, you know, it's good to give this thing a workout. So, yeah, I guess we'll check back in a little over 4 hours. So that would be around, what, 10:30 tonight? Looks like it's well underway. The black filament looks kind of almost like a silky, shiny, dark gray, but whatever. It really likes to blow that part cooling fan, doesn't it? Oh, you can see my fingerprints on the material. That's a big print. Wow, looks like there was a shift. Look at that, the last, I don't know, 20 layers. I also noticed that there's a separate setting for Hyper PLA in the software. So next thing I print, I should probably select that instead, shouldn't I? Here's some more tests with the Hyper PLA. Benchy done in Hyper PLA Black. 16-minute Benchy, which is pretty fast. Pretty good text on the bottom layer. It's a little off on this side. Probably a little deviation in the bed. There's a few visible deviations there. I know these are two different colors, but yeah, this is regular PLA trying to go the same speed as Hyper PLA, and there's definitely some banding here and here. Because remember, the main thing slowing down printers is the extrusion speed or the plastic cooling in time. That's where 99% of the limitations are, is in the extrusion. Because making the machine fast isn't that big of a deal. I mean, yeah, it has to also be accurate. I think what I'm going to try next, I might do a few more Hyper PLA prints, but I think I'm going to try dialing down the speed for regular PLA and see what is appropriate. I'm guessing it's probably going to be around, I don't want to say half speed, because yeah, I just tested that Anycubic not that long ago. I topped off at 150 millimeters a second for PLA. I might try this at 200. So these were both printed at 300 millimeters a second. The one on the right is regular PLA. This is Hyper PLA. The Hyper PLA did print better, but I'm going to see if I can get it to print regular PLA fairly quickly. I'm concerned about these deviations I see at about, oh, I don't know, 12 millimeters up and then about 20 millimeters up. Because I see that, in, especially in this like straight PLA Benchy. I went online and downloaded the latest firmware. I installed it via USB. It's pretty easy to do. Then I did a factory reset, and upon boot, now it's doing all the steps that it was supposed to on the first boot. And I also noticed, like right now, it's about to do Input shaping, which is the new hotness. That's where there's an accelerometer on the tool head, and the machine goes around shaking the tool head and getting like a resonance profile of like how the machine shakes, and then it actually takes that into account, or it compensates for it while it's printing. Input shaping. Most new printers do this. Yeah. So imagine like you're shaking a tree and you want to see which branches move the most, so you just know which ones are the weakest. It's kind of like that. But in this case, it's doing a profile of the machine's rigidity. So it's, you know how they like do like multiple points to level the bed. This is like getting a vibration profile of the machine. Anyway, none of this happened the first time. Although, you know, most of this stuff is just pretty obvious checks, but input shaping is actually pretty important. So yeah, maybe this is what we missed the first time. So yeah, at least out of the box, the firmware was fairly out of date, and this, actually I didn't even have the language selection when it turned on, if you recall. Okay, printing has started on another Benchy. Let's see if there's any difference. We're using Hyper PLA again, so see you in 38 minutes. Bud, are you a good boy? Say hi to the camera. Alright, so this is the Hyper PLA before the firmware update, which I just did. Anyway, yeah, you can see some deviation at this point in the model here. Now, I was talking to someone at Murph about this, and they said this is actually where layers change in the model, so this is usually where you do see some deviation. But then this one is marked F for firmware, and this one looks better. So if you get one of these machines, definitely check your firmware version, make sure it's up to date. There's also a new version of the software, which I downloaded. Here's a pair of Benchies I printed in regular PLA, 300 millimeters a second with the new firmware. There's line issues in the same place on both models. Yeah, that's weird. Seems like on this printer, looks like you might need the Hyper PLA to print at those speeds. Here's a cap that I print quite often for my controllers that I build. This is regular PLA again, 300 millimeters a second. And yeah, there's actually some ringing or ghosting in some of these areas. It's kind of like a little bit of a wavy line. This is the first time I've seen that with this printer. This is the same file, but printed with Hyper PLA, same speed. Yeah, it's definitely a lot better. From these tests, it definitely seems like if you want to actually go full speed, you need to use the Hyper PLA. Probably has something to do with how it melts and cools, since that's a pretty important part, especially when you're moving that fast. I printed this longer piece. This is for one of my PlayStation 4 controllers. And I'm still seeing issues. I'm still seeing issues at the same layer height. And it actually matches the other models like the Shippy. The Z-axis drive rods seemed pretty solid, as did the bed itself. They say you can adjust these screws here if the bed is wobbly. So the other thing I just tried adjusting was these belt tightening screws back here. There's two of them there, two of them there. In this economy, I'm literally tightening my belt. And let's see if that makes a difference. I designed a small print that is in the basic shape of a Benchy. And it seems like tightening the belts did resolve the layer issue here. I'm not seeing it like before. You can see it in the boat there, but it's not there. However, it's introduced a new issue, which is, I don't want to call it ribbing, but it's like, it's almost like a ribbing or washboarding across it. So this one was printed horizontal, this one was printed horizontal, this one was printed vertical or rotated 90 degrees, and it's got it in the same axis along the x-axis. Well, the y-axis looks good. So I found a video online, and apparently the reason they include two extra metric screws is because there's another way to tighten the belts. So let's try that. Yeah, this hole here, you insert a screw into it and it tightens the spring that's visible here, and apparently there's one on the other side as well. That same video, which I'll link below, also says that you can use an app to listen to the frequency of the belts when you flick them with your finger. Okay, 110 hertz it says. Man, this is a lot of steps for out of the box, and this thing's like, what, $500-600? I loosened up the belts quite a bit. I still can't really tell, like, I see frequencies from like 146 to like 120. I couldn't get it down to 110, because yeah, if you want the frequency to be lower, you have to make the belt looser, so it oscillates less. But they seem like quite loose now. I don't think I want to go much looser than that. Hey, you want to hear my impression of another YouTuber? Banished from Earth classic game room broadcast from the intergalactic space arcade on its never-ending mission to review Truxton. Here, I realize, like, it takes less force for this thing to move diagonally because of the way the motors are connected than it takes for it to move in just a straight XY axis. I don't know what this configuration is called, but basically you use two motors to drive the two different axes, but they're combined. Oh yeah, that's way too loose. Look at that thing hopping off the idler. I pulled the tube out of the energy chain and I attached a separate tube so it goes straight up. I was reading online that this tight bend here can be a problem, and I was noticing it as well as when I was loading it, even by hand, like going around that curve caused an issue. So that could be causing friction even with this PTFE tube, which could cause an under extrusion. So, I mean, do you really need this thing enclosed if you're not printing ABS? I know ABS is kind of coming back into fashion. ABS is the new black. Anyway, I'm printing another test piece. Oh, and I'm going to try putting a heat set insert into this one. Guess that's kind of redundant to tell you that because you're about to see it. Oh yes, this printed much better. Man, I kind of wonder if that tube was the problem, not the belts. Yeah, it's very smooth walls. You can actually... I know I always say this. I mean, you can see the difference between like the main walls and the cap walls as well, like the walls at the top. The tolerance of this hole is a little off. This should be... it's supposed to be 3.9. This heat set doesn't quite fit. Guess I could give it a little love tap with my... You may not believe this, but I'm an American, but I have metric drill bits. Yeah, so I drilled it up to 4 millimeters just there. Okay, so this is a tip that's designed to go onto a Weller iron, and it's a heat set tip. You know, like Fahrenheit, the temperature in Fahrenheit, 32 to 212, it's actually meant to be like a wheel or circle. So if you think about it that way, the difference between the freezing point and boiling point of water is 180 degrees on that wheel. So there is some sense to it. Yeah. Was that the issue? Was just that tube causing friction? Yeah. It's like this print here, like I'm printing a slightly taller one of these just to double check. But yeah, I don't see any of those deviations at like the 10 millimeter mark. Although why would that happen on every print? That is weird because as the tube doesn't change its position. Yeah, because well, you look at this one. Like this print has those, well, I don't want to, they're not technically witness marks, but it has those marks at that height, but this thing doesn't. And I saw that in the benchies as well. I'm sure this is perfectly straight. Shall never jump again. Time to recycle it. Oh, it's really in there. Huh, nice. Actually, I think that's only 2 walls. I lowered that as well. Some of these other prints I was doing at 4 walls. I usually do like 3 on my prints. Oh no, it's not perfectly straight. They flew a little close to the sun by putting that tube in the energy train. The energy chain. It's like a movie. It's a B-movie show. When are they going to remake that? It'll be like the brave little cell phone. It'll be like, you got thrown away because your owner got tired of you after 2 years and got a new model with 10% more RAM. Now you're in the landfill. Oh wait, Phil Hartman's dead. So I guess I'll have to hire Jack Nicholson to sound like Jack Nicholson. Hashtag deep cuts. Here's a slightly taller one. Yeah, the walls look really good now. Just to double check, I'm going to print another one of those benchies. But yeah, I might need to adjust the belts a little bit more, but everything here is looking pretty good. Let's try another one of these. Yeah, I put it in straight that time. I bumped up the hole to 4.1 millimeters. It's still... I tried to put one in cold before I rolled the camera. Still didn't quite drop in. The difference between the 3 top layers and the main walls, because it does like the top, like, well, you can specify how many times, but usually it's about 3 times. But still, you know, should have come out of the box working better than that. And that tube design on the top, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, this will look cool if we do it this way, but doesn't really work that cool. I know it doesn't look as cool to have a big white tube sticking out of the top of your printer, but what's more important, how cool it looks or how well it looks? I mean, we're not talking about Apple here. You know, the $1 trillion fashion accessory company. No, it's like, make your printer work well even if it doesn't look as cool. But then it's like, oh, the energy chain is right here. Let's put the tube in it. Well, actually, if the tube is constantly compressing and decompressing, that could also create stress points. Well, not stress points, but compression points that could add friction. So that tube is only like a 1/4 of a millimeter larger than the filament itself. So even if the tube is really slippery, well, I mean, the tube is really slippery, but if you have enough bend over time, it will add friction, not just that thing on the end. This is the most boomer thing I have ever 3D printed. It's a letter holder, or rather a bill holder. I kind of wanted to make one for my desk upstairs. Let's see how this huge, large, flat print comes off. The magnet comes loose pretty easily. So I have this thing, like... Oh, I did put glue on the corners just to make sure it wouldn't rise up. Well, it's got some stringing. These overhangs here, those aren't super great. Usually things can handle circles better than that. I mean, I probably should have had supports, but I don't know. Flexed up in the middle. So this is probably flat, that isn't. It took about 4 hours to print this. So I mean, it still appears flat, but there was lifting on the first layer. And this is kind of like the signature of it. Should still work. I'm printing another large object. Well, not as large as this. It's a stand I just drew for Hub 75 LED panels. So we'll probably take a look at that next. And that'll appear instantaneous for you. I printed some more large pieces. These are for some Hub 75 LED panels. So let's give these a try. And let's see. Alright, so center panel here. This goes... Oh no, I didn't account for that nub there. But you know what can account for it? A Dremel. All too easy. There goes the sun. Here comes the night. Somebody turn on the light. Walt Disney Pictures presents the brave little cell phone. Live action. I tried to find a pattern for these mounting brackets, but I just had to measure it like a caveman. But I made the holes a little on the big side, so I should be able to adjust it. I had that song stuck in my head all weekend. with Beyonce as the brave little toaster. Who would be in that? So Beyonce would be the brave little toaster. Josh Gad would be in it for some reason. Oh, the vacuum would become a Dyson, so his name would be Dyson in the new one. And they would just leave him in the junkyard. Toy Story 3 should have ended in the junkyard. Toy Story is just brave little toaster, but with no balls. Actually, like all three, there's elements of all three the first three Toy Story movie plots in Brave Little Toaster. Like, instead of Sid mutilating the toys, there's the guy with the repair shop taking the parts out, and then the household objects turn on him and escape, just like in Toy Story 1. Then there's like a television ad which drives the plot so they know where to go, like Toy Story 2. And it ends in the junkyard, like Toy Story 3. I don't know if I just ruined or saved your childhood. You decide. That was also like the first movie where they ever had the A113 reference. This one on the right's a little messed up. I can make my own Times Square now. Today on Ben Heck Hacks, we're going to be reviewing printers and discussing the brave little toaster. Well, at least the toaster's made of metal. You know what's going to happen to you, Dyson? You're made of plastic. You don't actually get recycled. You just get piled up somewhere, out of sight, out of mind. That's your function! I'm going to do one final test with this thing before I give you my overall view. I'm going to print multiple copies of one object just to see how it handles it. It says this will take about 3 hours. So we'll be back in 3 hours, or 3 seconds for you. Looks like everything printed okay. Kind of some stringing between the parts. Probably should adjust the retraction in the software. See how easily these come off. Oh, pops off just like the ice cubes in the ice cube tray, you know. There is still some layer deviation here. I can feel it with my fingers. They all stuck to the bed quite nice. But yeah, I think I'm going to still need to probably dial in the belts a little bit more. And the Z-rods, they seem stiff. It's kind of a weird shine there. Overview of the Creality K1 3D printer. Pros. It's very fast. 300 millimeters a second. That's pretty fast. It can apparently go even faster, although I did not try that because, as you saw, I was having some issues at 300 millimeters a second. However, yeah, it's pretty awesome that you can print things that fast. It has a pretty large build volume, which is cool, and an enclosed case. So if you want to print something like ABS, you can try to limit the airflow. I liked how the software had some quirks, like especially the manual supports. That didn't work super great. However, I liked how it had the Wi-Fi capabilities, and I was able to see the machine on the Wi-Fi network and send prints to it without even having to touch the machine. That was nice. If you had like a farm of these, you could easily just select whichever one is idle and then send the print to that particular unit. Okay, so now on to the cons. All right, so out of the box, it was a little clunky. I had to, well, first of all, even like the initial setup didn't work exactly the way I thought it would. Like it was missing some steps. Like on mine out of the box, it didn't go through the it didn't go through the initialization process. Then yeah, I had some layer issues. I was able to mitigate it somewhat by putting in a longer filament tube. I think them putting the filament tube through the energy chain creates too much friction, especially at the very end where it curves and goes right into the extruder. I think that's a little too aggressive. I know they were trying to get it to fit inside of a certain volume of the box, but I think that was probably a step too far. Also, the energy chain kind of clunks against the lid, again, showing that the top of the unit they're trying to fly a little too close to the sun. So for the price point, I don't think a printer should have this many out-of-the-box issues, at least not in 2023. Maybe if it was like 8 years ago, you know, and $600 was like a screaming deal for a printer, that would be more acceptable. But in 2023, I don't think that it is. So yeah, I think you know, if you can get a good deal on one, perhaps, and are okay with having to fine tune things out of the box. I've never actually used or owned a Creality before. I've heard that it is kind of an ongoing thing where sometimes the users have to tweak them. However, I have reviewed quite a few Anycubics, which, let's face it, are basically clones of Crealities, and I've had a lot fewer out of the box issues with those, although of course they weren't perfect. So yeah, it's a nice compact unit. I'm going to do some more research as to how to dial it in, and if I get the prints dialed in a little bit further, perhaps I'll make a follow-up video. But for now, I would hesitate to recommend this because, again, for that price, especially when you can get printers all day long for $300, they might not be as fast. They don't have the nice enclosure, but in my experience, they tend to just work more smoothly out of the box. Okay, that was my review of the Creality K1 3D printer. It's pretty cool how it is very high speed, but there were some out-of-the-box problems that I felt brought the experience down, especially for the price, which is around $600, I believe. Do you have one of these printers? Have you run into any of these issues? Let me know in the comments below, and maybe I can try to tweak things in the future. Thanks!